Treasury is looking at ways to find the estimated 20 billion rand that we need to pay for the rollout. One idea that's been mooted is a wealth tax, and I want to look at that now, the advantages and disadvantages, with Léo Chaeka from the Paris School of Economics World Inequality Lab, I understand, talking to us today from Belgium. Léo, good afternoon to you and welcome. You're proposing a progressive solidarity wealth tax. How would it work, and potentially how much money could it raise?
So thank you very much for your invitation. This wealth tax would be a progressive wealth tax on the richest 1% of the South African population, and it would impose progressive tax rates from 3% to 7%. It would start from 3.8 million net wealth, and the last bracket, the last threshold, would be for everything above 147 million. So it would really concentrate only on wealth above that threshold. And our estimation, even taking into account possible evasion, lead us to think that this wealth tax could contribute to collect to about 134 billion rand.
No doubt that you've seen a lot of the criticism that's been leveled at the plan here in South Africa. One says that we have a steeply progressive wealth tax regime anyway, the top 10% of earners basically paying all of South Africa's personal tax, and this would perhaps be a bridge too far. Would you be concerned about an evasion rate on this?
So at the moment in South Africa, there is indeed a progressive tax, but on income, not on wealth. And wealth itself is relatively little taxed through estate duty or tax on transfers. Now, the concern that maybe this additional wealth tax would impose too much of a fiscal burden on people already paying a lot is addressed in this policy paper. One has to keep in mind that this would tax only 1% of the population, the very richest. So for sure, people in general who already pay a lot of income tax. But keep in mind that it only imposes wealth above the threshold. And even after tax, these 1% richest would still remain the 1% richest in South Africa. Also, in general, I think this question as to whether a tax is too much or not, and some people are too much taxed or not, should be considered regarding the policy objective that one should set collectively. So the question is it too much regarding the current need in terms of government revenue, or is it too much if one wants to curb extreme inequality, which have been persistent since apartheid?
Professor, you would have seen the information emerging from the Davis Tax Commission. It was also tasked with looking at this particular issue. It decided, and I quote, that the ceiling on wealth tax has probably been reached. How then do you deal with resistance from people? Because that inevitably would emerge, surely.
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind to balance the view about the pros and cons of the wealth tax. So it is true, and we talk about this in the policy report, it is true that maybe some of the richest people will migrate or maybe evade the tax, or maybe it will have some negative impact on investment. But it's not that all people will migrate or that suddenly all investment will go away. So these negative impacts need to be weighted against the positive impact, that is the total tax revenue that one could collect. The Danish Tax Committee also advised that to adequately know whether wealth tax should be imposed, we would need additional data. And so we sort of prolong this effort to know whether wealth tax is worth by providing new estimates on how much a wealth tax could collect in terms of revenue. And we have new data, transparent and informed assumptions, and there's even a tax simulator that one can play with on the World Inequality Lab website.
Professor, would there be a concern that if this were to happen and the money is raised, that it would be used responsibly and transparently without corruption?
So that is an excellent question, and that is a serious concern as well. So let me remind just that this concern applies to any tax, right? So already the VAT and the personal income tax which exist in South Africa. We think that if any wealth tax is to be imposed in South Africa, it should also go along with a renewed social contract to guarantee that all these new tax revenues would be adequately spent, adequately collected and spent. Yeah.
There is no doubt this is a contentious debate, and I'm sure a lot more to come. I'm going to thank Professor Léo Chaeka from the Paris School of Economics, the World Inequality Lab. Thank you very much for joining us.